Before we start talking about the bumper, I thought it would be worth mentioning the packaging. The entire bumper is thoroughly covered in bubble wrap and foam, and it did a perfect job of protecting the powder coat from any kind of chipping during shipping. Anyway, now let's move on to the actual bumper. This bumper stands out from many of the others due to its unique vented design. It is solid in the midsection like most bumpers, but each end has a cutout filled with steel mesh. The bumper's design also features these 3 reflective panels on the front, and they can be removed if you want to. I'm currently on the fence about if I should keep them or not, so we'll check out both options once we get the bumper installed. Overall, I'm a fan of the bumper's design, and I've got to give OHR props for releasing something new like this for the JKs, even after the world has already moved on to the JLs. Also included in the box are the mounting brackets and hardware, instruction sheet, and 2 D-rings with isolators. Finally, the bumper includes an entire tow hitch assembly. This will only be necessary if you don't have the factory tow hitch, as the bumper will also work with the factory setup as well. We'll go ahead and test both options later in the install. So that's the basic rundown of the bumper, and we'll talk more about it and kind of review it later on. First though, let's go ahead and start the install by removing the factory rear bumper. To start off removing the rear bumper, we're first going to take off these metal brackets on each side. Each metal bracket is held in place by 4 bolts, and they can be easily removed with a 16mm socket. Once we get those out of the way, we're going to move under the Jeep where there's 2 brackets with 2 bolts each. We can use the same 60mm socket to go ahead and remove the top and bottom bolts from each of these brackets, and then we should be able to pull the rear bumper straight off. If your Jeep has the factory tow hook, you can go ahead and remove it as well using an 18mm socket. Now that we've got the rear bumper off, we can finally get moving on the actual install. Up first, I'll show you how to mount up the new hitch in case you don't have the factory one. And if you already have the factory hitch and don't want to change it out, you can just kind of skip that part and move on straight to mounting the bumper. To install the new hitch, we're just going to hold it up in place and run the 4 bolts through the holes in the frame. The 4 bolts are going to go bolt head, lock ring, and washer facing the rear of the Jeep, and then just the lock nut on the other side facing the front of the Jeep. On the driver's side most bolt, we'll also throw in our trailer wiring harness bracket. With all those bolts in place, we can go ahead and tighten everything down to around 60 foot-pounds. And finally, we get to what we've all been waiting for, the rear bumper install. We'll start off by sliding in these L brackets into the frame rails and making sure the holes in those L brackets line up with the holes in the frame rails. Next, we can actually take the bumper and set it down on the frame rails and thread in our 6 bolts. Each side of the bumper has 3 bolts, 2 on the side of the frame rail and then 1 going up through the bottom. We can tighten all these bolts down to 60 foot-pounds and we are done with the install.